Hey there, and welcome to the IT Guy Show. I'm your host, Eric the IT Guy Hendricks, and this is episode 20. Today, we're going to be talking about how can you avoid the chat GPTs and the Claudes of the world and build your own locally hosted LLM. This is kind of exciting because this is kind of our first officially sponsored episode here on the channel, so I'm excited to share a little bit about that later on. But it wouldn't be an episode of the IT Guy Show unless I had an amazing guest here to tell me all the things that I don't know. And so let me bring in Damen Knight. He is a coworker of mine at CIQ. And so, Damen, I won't steal your thunder. Why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction?
Yeah, it's great to be here. As Eric said, my name is Damen Knight. I am a senior principal automation engineer at CIQ, and unofficially, I'm kind of the in-house AI guy for all things.
So tell me, automation engineer. That sounds like fun. What do you get to do with that?
It's a lot of fun putting together an operating system, like we do, but it's very difficult. There's a whole lot of steps involved, and as we come out with more and more variants and we want to push releases out faster and faster, it's impossible for the poor humans to hit all of the buttons fast enough and keep everything up and running and stable and properly tested. So I spend a whole lot of time making sure that us engineers get to sleep.
As I get older, I found that sleep is actually important. So that's always a good thing. I always ask my guests, who are you and what do you do? But the question that everyone seems to enjoy the most is, what do you do for fun when you're not automating tasks away, working for a for-profit company? What do you do on your own time?
Oh, I'm a nerd through and through. When I'm not writing code at work, I'm frequently writing my own code. But on top of that, I'm actually an amateur astrophotographer. I actually live out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. I've got a bunch of giant telescopes in my backyard, and I spend a lot of time taking pictures of the stars.
Oh, that's so cool. As a sci-fi geek, we'll have to talk about that. That's really awesome. So with that in mind, I did mention that this is the first officially sponsored podcast episode of the IT Guy Show. Back in my days as a pseudo show podcast host, we had sponsors basically from day one, thanks to Destination Linux. The IT Guy Show, I've kept sponsor free for now, but I'm kind of trying to highlight some really cool movers and shakers in the industry. And so CIQ, the company that both Damen and I currently work for, is kind of the same. Or is kind of a special case, just because I really, all of you know, I love technology. I love cool ways of doing things. And so we're going to talk about one of the things that CIQ just released a few weeks ago. But just a disclaimer, Damen and I both work for CIQ, and yes, this is a sponsored episode of the IT Guy Show. This will be your informal commercial for the episode. The rest of the content will be kind of will just kind of be the typical format that you all have come to love and download. So with that said, if you're interested in sponsoring an episode of the IT Guy Show, please reach out, contact at itguyeric.com or podcast at itguyeric.com would probably be the more direct route. With that said, let's get back into it. So Damen, you said you became kind of the de facto IT AI guy here at CIQ. So why don't we start there? What are some of your responsibilities as the AI guy?
A lot of my time is spent and has been spent on building out AI benchmarking systems and working on performance tuning and helping to kind of teach internally what best practices are for using AI and working with AI and all of that, and just kind of trying to help push things in the right direction to make it a less painful experience for everybody involved.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the more I realize, the more I work with AI, both locally and commercially hosted options, it's amazing how just changing a few words in your prompt can go from, wow, this output is utter garbage, this is the worst tool I've ever used, to, oh my gosh, I never would have thought of it that way.
Yeah, there's a bit of a joke that AI is an intern, right?
Yeah.
It's sometimes it blows you away with the ideas and the cool stuff that you get out of it, and sometimes you just shake your head and you go, "Man, what? Huh? What were you thinking?"
Yeah, my favorite is the comparison. It's like, here's my old draft, here's the new draft. What works better, what doesn't? And it comes back and goes, it looks exactly the same. It's like, I just spent the last hour rewriting the entire body of this. This is not the same. But okay, you go home. You're drunk. But that kind of leads to a more broad question, and I like to do this with guests. I like to kind of start at the 50,000 foot view and kind of zoom in on kind of the specifics. So from your, I mean, you've been in automation, you've been on the Linux side, and now the AI side. So I'm really curious about your particular opinions about the state of AI infrastructure, particularly from an infrastructure perspective.
Sure. So I have some bias here. I'll be honest, and it's not actually because of who I work for. It's because I have a ridiculous lab in my house that I like to do testing and tinkering and all of that on. Right. I've got a server rack in a shed in the backyard, just as everyone does. And so I like to play with AI as a user, right? Not just as for my job and building AI things, but I like using it. And since I have my own infrastructure, I spend a lot of time dealing with my own infrastructure. It's the AI is amazing and wonderful and great. Infrastructure hasn't really kept up. I can't tell you how many times I've had to completely blow away servers and rebuild from scratch because I got lost in dependency mazes and, just winding up really frustrated and spending more time trying to figure out how to make the AI system work than using it.
Right. And so I promised you that we often go off script on the show, and we've done so already. So staying true to my roots here, I'm curious, how is that balance? Because one of the things I want to try and do around content and around my own home lab this year is I want to become more reliant on my home lab. Right now, it's running Plex and Minecraft and a couple of other miscellaneous things that I don't use that often. And then, in fact, in the previous episode, I was talking about how tired I am of all these subscription services. I'm tired of paying out $20 here and $50 there. I mean, streaming itself is, can we agree, streaming has gotten worse than cable ever was, and there's still nothing on to watch unless you're watching Star Trek Strange New Worlds. But it's like I want to bring more and more of that in-house. And so I'm kind of curious as I've been playing with this idea and I've been asking around the industry and my own network of nerdy friends, what is that balance like for you? I don't want to become the at-home systems administrator. There's a reason I went into sales and marketing was so I didn't have to be a sysadmin anymore full time. So what does that balance look like for you?
Well, I mean, for me, there isn't really a balance, right? This is what I do for a living. I do it because I love it. So I'm, a little more willing to eat some of the pain than some folks are. But I'm a lunatic. I run my own DNS. Like I own domain names that I'm not using Route 53's name servers. I'm running my own name servers in my house.
Okay, you're on a different level here, sir.
Yeah, I'm not a sane person. But actually, honestly, the reality is actually I don't spend a lot of time on care and feeding and upkeep. Getting it working the first time is where you spend most of the effort. But once it's there, as long as you're being good about backups and all of the standard best practices so that you're not real sad when the inevitable crash comes, yeah. Because it will come, then you're fine. But I've got a petabyte of storage.
Holy crap.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful. Astrophotography, man, it takes up a lot of space.
That's fair.
But that also means there are no backups. right? Where am I backing up a petabyte of astrophotography? I'm not. So, you know, I have to put on my sysadmin hat and go, okay, cool, understand what I care about, you know, figure out what my processes are to keep the important things safe, and accept the fact that, yeah, I'm self-hosting, and being in the self-hosting camp means there are risks and dangers.
So if anyone from Backblaze is listening to this, I think Damon would like to discuss your petabyte backup plan. Maybe Backblaze will sponsor an episode now. So we're before you know, I'm the host, and I'm usually the one to derail my guests from the agreed upon conversation. So getting back to kind of the state of AI infrastructure, kind of talked about what it's like kind of from your own perspective, but what about from the industry level? What's kind of the average organization dealing with as far as GPUs and AI models?
Yeah, you know, the AI market's in a weird space, right? There's not enough hardware for anybody. You know, resources are strained. So a lot of companies are just honestly taking whatever they can get wherever they can get it. A lot, you know, tends to be in the clouds, right? The hyperscalers, you know, grabbing, you know, AWS, you know, hosts or Azure hosts or whatever that have those big GPUs, because it's you know, your options are limited. You can do that. You can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars buying servers and GPUs, but otherwise you're going on really old gear. There's a lot of that too, right? There's folks who are running, you know, T4s still in production today, and you know, heck, go to Azure. They'll sell you A10s all day long. There's nothing wrong with them. They're a great GPU, but they're getting long in the tooth these days. So like all these companies have really mixed environments. Stuff is spread all over the place. They don't know what they're going to have. And who even knows what operating systems they're trying to run stuff
Right.
on, right? It's the driver stacks are different. The install processes are different. It's a little bit of a mess. And you know, if you work in IT, or you know, you're one of those admins trying to, you know, maintain your Terraform scripts or whatever to keep everything sane and right, is just it's not a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I need to replace the USB-C cable for my webcam, and replace my NVIDIA. Gosh, it's consumer grade. It's like 7, 8 years old. I forget what the model number is off the top of my head, but about all it does anymore is just plex transcoding. And I tried to throw a local LLM at it, and I swear the thing called me on my phone and just said, "Please turn this off." So I can only imagine what it's like. There was a story that leaked out of NVIDIA, I think last year, even maybe around supercompute last year, where a lot of the NVIDIA sales folks are just kind of sitting back because they've already sold everything for like the next 18 months. That's how far back ordered some of these GPU chip providers are, and there's just not a solution in sight. And these AI models are getting bigger and more complex, so the problem is getting worse, not better.
Oh, absolutely. The cards that were cutting edge, you know, 3 years ago are unusable and almost outright today in a lot of cases. That's crazy.
So let me ask you another off the cuff question here. What do you think the solution is? Is the AI bubble going to pop, or is there some new hardware platform that's going to come to be? CPUs get better at doing AI models. What does Damon think?
That's a really tough one, right? You know, it's obvious that the current approach won't scale for forever. You know, fundamentally, there's got to be someone somewhere has to make a breakthrough, and they probably already have, and we just haven't heard yet. But right, someone has to make a breakthrough that really brings the availability and the accessibility down, right? If that's you know, making it so that older hardware can, you know, oh cool, we don't actually need so many tensor cores. You know, we found a way to do this in floating point math or in some other way, right? Cool, awesome. Or maybe it's just, oh hey, we found a thing that isn't, you know, VRAM heavy. Please, right? If we can find a way to not be so memory bottlenecked, that would, I'd save a fortune.
Right, no kidding. And like you, I want to run an LLM in my home lab. Like I've joked, not really joking, but I've made the comment that I would love to take some of the D&D modules and rule books that I have in electronic format, feed them to a local LLM, and build my own DM. Be able to just
we should talk. We should talk.
Definitely, for sure. So yeah, I don't have an answer either, and it's prices are going to continue to go up, and it's affecting RAM prices now too, and of course the global economic and political climate isn't helping things either. And there's just, I don't know, maybe this AI bubble pops. I remember a decade ago when blockchain was going to solve every problem out there, and that kind of died off. I don't think AI will die off quite as much. I think it's here to stay, but I don't think it'll look like it does today when it finally solidifies.
Honestly, I think the big shift is going to be, if you've looked at those unified memory architecture systems, right? The Apple systems, those AMD systems with unified memory architecture where you have a shared memory bus. I think those are going to make, as those get better and faster, that's going to really open it up a lot. Like I have one of those mini PCs sitting, in the other room. I'm looking at it right now, and it's only got 128 gigs of RAM, and none of that is dedicated VRAM because it is unified memory. But I can run Qwen 3 Coder Next and have it be completely usable, like a little bit slow, but no worse than Claude when Claude is having a slow day.
Oh, and does he?
But right, like that's okay. You know what? To me, that's holy cow. For under $3,000, I can now have usable local LLM. Wow, like that hasn't been a thing yet. Like this is I think the big shift. And so even if the bubble were to pop, right? Like AI coding, AI assisted development, AI workloads aren't going away, but they're going to shift where and how they run. And it's, the moon may no longer be the target. And, what OpenAI just shut down Sora because video AI generation is way too expensive even for them. Right? So maybe some of those things start to fall off.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and I like that. That's a good pragmatic view of, and I think it'll happen a lot quicker than a lot of people are projecting. Like some of the model breakthroughs that people were expecting in around 2030 or so, I think we'll see in the next couple of years. It's accelerating so fast, and as someone who started his career stacking literal servers. And like I remember when VMware announced vMotion for the first time, the ability to move a virtual machine from one physical host to another without even dropping a packet. When I started, that was revolutionary technology. That was going to be the end of systems administrators as we know it. And here we are, in 2026, and we're talking about building AIs that can build other AIs that can manage infrastructure. I mean, granted, this is the same system that couldn't spell strawberry a year ago, but we'll get there.
Honestly, though, right? Like that, I love that though, right? That to me is a wonderful example, right? If you say, hey, where was AI literally a year ago? How many R's are in strawberry? I don't know. And then you look at it today where, Anthropic is using Claude Code to write Claude Code and like co-work and major features. They're dog fooding real hard and launching production quality businesses, right? That's nuts.
Granted, some of the other enterprise Linux companies have released their version of what we're going to talk about today already, but being here, getting to watch it come out of beta and be public release, we're of course talking about RLC Pro AI. That is Rocky Linux from CIQ Pro Artificial Intelligence version. We'll talk about what that is here in a second, but a lot of different Linux providers have released their own versions of this. But what the industry has realized is, particularly with the hardware limitations, particularly with hardware availability, we've come to realize something that hasn't been a problem since since the days that we left mainframe for consumer, not consumer grade. What's the word I'm looking for? We left mainframes for Dell systems that are built out of components that we can build multiple of the same. And gosh, the word's escaping me. I speak for a living, and sometimes English is hard. But we went to this space where you can buy 1,000 Dell servers, HP servers, or whatever, identical, and just throw them in a rack, throw them in a data center, power them up, install the operating system, and go. This is what we call a general purpose Linux operating system. And if you go to anywhere, Rocky Linux, CentOS Stream, Ubuntu, if we go to any of these places and download an ISO, that's predominantly what, for the last 20, 30 years, what you get is a general purpose Linux install. And then you kind of build it to whatever spec you need. You install databases, or you add extra memory, and it runs some graphically intensive web application. But I think we've kind of hit a wall here between hardware and cost of ownership, and just the sheer complexity of computations with some of these AI models in particular, where the general purpose Linux install just doesn't cut it anymore.
Yeah, I think you're really right about that. We talked about it earlier, but it's really common to see folks spend more time on the infrastructure than on the actual application or whatever it is they're trying to accomplish, right? And that's when things are upside down, right? That's not how this is supposed to go.
Wait, it's not?
I know. We've been doing it. Apparently, we've just been doing it wrong for the last decade or so.
Well, I'm reminded from time to time by friends of mine that not everyone installs Linux just to install Linux, like the sysadmin in me does. I used to distro hop back in the day, but apparently most people install Linux virtual machines or servers for specific workloads. So that, I don't know if that was news for you, Damon, but it's a shock to me.
Yeah, very big surprise.
So what is it about these AI workloads that's different from just a typical server workload?
Well, I mean, obviously, right, you're spending a lot of time in GPU space. You're not CPU bottlenecked almost ever. If you are, something has gone wrong. But you're spending a whole lot of time, hopefully, GPU bottlenecked or memory bottlenecked. But like suddenly you're worrying about bus speeds and things like that, where again, general purpose computing, you don't care. You have memory and CPU, and as long as you've got headroom, you're happy. And now you've got other devices that you have to worry about. And, those devices are big monolithic blocks of importance to you, right? You, especially if you're coming from the consumer space, if you're dealing with a 1080 or 3090 or 5090 or whatever, right? If you want to run AI workloads, congratulations, that's what your GPU is doing. And You're going to have one model loaded up, and you're going to be doing like one thing. You've head over to data center world, and you've got technologies like MIG. You can split GPUs into smaller GPUs so that you can run multiple models and multiple kinds of things at the same time on slices of the same hardware. But right, there's a whole lot of complication that comes with that. There's all this, software from NVIDIA, and you need special compilers, and what libraries are and it's not just what libraries does your hardware support, but it's what libraries was your software written to utilize. It gets real complicated real fast. And NVIDIA likes to deprecate drivers and support for hardware. And so it's kind of a crapshoot sometimes.
And that's a really good point, especially for anyone who's been around Linux for any length of time and has ever tried to install NVIDIA GPU graphics drivers. So anyone out there is probably nodding their head and grinding their teeth a little bit about trying to get NVIDIA graphics installed properly on Linux, and then inevitably someone forgets to recompile the kernel with the right modules, and it's kind of a mess. But it's even more so when you talk about AI workloads. We get into things like CUDA. So could you explain to folks that aren't necessarily sure what CUDA is, or maybe have heard the term? What is CUDA, and how does that impact your operating system?
Yeah, so CUDA is kind of all of the magic software that NVIDIA writes to optimize their GPUs, right? It makes the software work the best. What enables all of their cool features. If you have multiple GPUs, right, that's where some of the magic lives, for NVLink and things like that. But right, the CUDA stuff is what makes the tensor magic, and then the cards run fast. But that's also, while that's a wonderful thing, and that's why NVIDIA kind of dominates the market so heavily, because CUDA is really good at what it does. It is a big piece of software. It's a complicated piece of software. It frequently requires its own compiler to write things for, and there isn't a nice, friendly way to install it, which is kind of interesting. At least in Linux, if you're a Windows user, for some strange reason, I'm kidding. But right, the process is a little more streamlined and a little easier, right? You just go to nvidia.com and you download an executable and you run it. In the Linux world, it just doesn't work that way, right? The CUDA versions depend on your underlying OS layer and what drivers you've got and what hardware you've got and all of that. So it's exciting.
So do you or someone you've worked with have a horror story around trying to get NVIDIA drivers and CUDA set up and working?
Oh, so many.
The audience loves a good disaster story. We all seem to thrive on others' pain.
Well, it's so I've got my home lab, and in the days before RLC AI, if you wanted to run AI stuff in general, you were probably going to Ubuntu. That's just kind of, the community is there, and so that tends to be the space where you default to. And oh boy, you would think Ubuntu, being one of the friendliest Linux distros out there, installing CUDA would be easy. But no, right? You can't just apt-get install CUDA. Yeah, you would think maybe you could, because that's the way most Ubuntu things work. But no, you have to go get the repo, you have to get the GPG keys, right? There's all of these steps. And you have to also get, as I mentioned before, you have to get the right CUDA version for your OS. And Ubuntu has interesting numbering systems, right? 24 was the LTS release for forever. 25 was the new hotness for a while. I think 26 is out or coming out, and I think that'll probably be new LTS again.
So we are releasing on March 31st, and so 2604 should be out in the next few weeks.
Cool. All right, so pretty close. But so right, if you go look for CUDA drivers, there are Ubuntu 24 CUDA drivers, and there are Ubuntu 26 CUDA drivers and packages. They don't exist for 25. That doesn't, you can still do it, but you have to know that you have to install the 24 CUDA library, which is maybe not obvious. I didn't find it obvious, but yeah, I spent a whole lot of time trying to figure out why I couldn't find CUDA drivers for an OS that clearly CUDA worked on. And then when I finally got that working, I discovered that the Torch is a thing, right? If you're doing AI workloads, you're dealing with Torch, but you have to compile Torch for CUDA and you have to compile torch for the right CUDA. And if you do any of those things wrong, you're doing all of your inferencing and LLM work on your CPU, and may or may not know it until you wonder why you're getting half a token a second. Which is exactly what happened to me after I finally went through all of that nightmare to figure out how to get the 25 needs 24 CUDA drivers thing. I wound up with the wrong torch compiled CUDA, and so I was really confused why my A30 was really under delivering. And not generating tokens at the rate that I expected. And it's, oh no, I'm still doing CPU generation because the CUDA was torched properly. And
oh, I feel that pain. And the one thing you forgot to mention was that, like, I found this to be pretty much universally true, that it is that if you're a systems administrator, it doesn't matter how big your environment is, you'll inevitably end up with Ubuntu and enterprise Linux distributions, whether that's RHEL, Rocky, Alma, CentOS, Linux 7, which is still out there in the hundreds of thousands of nodes. That is just like, oh, great. So which version do I use on this, and the thing and the stuff? And that's when you break out the bourbon, and you just know I want to be up until midnight trying to work on this.
Honestly, I just last week spun up a Ubuntu box to do some AI stuff on. I was recording some demos, and immediately was, oh man, okay, hang on, I have to go Google and like start writing down instruction sets ahead of time so I can remember how to get this up and running, because it is long and complicated enough that, yeah, it kind of requires instructions.
Yeah. Oh goodness. So we've hinted at it a little bit just a few weeks ago, and the release will be in the show notes. But a few weeks ago, CIQ actually released RLC Pro AI, and so the quick overview, without putting on my marketing hat, the quick overview is that enterprise Linux is a well-established platform to build off of. And I gave this talk so many times at Red Hat that I can still do it in my sleep, and do occasionally. So you start with the upstream kernel, and then from there, the Fedora community pulls in, and they build out a new release every 9 months or so. And then every so often, CentOS Stream will pull from Fedora and create the next major version of CentOS Stream. And then every 3 years, Red Hat will build Red Hat Enterprise Linux off of what it equates to kind of a snapshot of CentOS Stream, and that's what becomes the next major version of RHEL. Now, that's kind of the top half of that tree. The next piece is then Community Rocky Linux will actually rebuild from the RHEL binaries. And that's how we get Community Rocky Linux. And then from there, CIQ as a corporate entity, very, very separate, but kind of intertwined, separate but intertwined. Does that work? We'll go with it. But then CIQ pulls from Community Rocky Linux and does some enterprise things to Community Rocky and builds RLC Plus and RLC Pro. If you're listening and you're looking for a CentOS Linux type experience, look at RLC Plus, and we'll talk about a couple of reasons why that'll come in handy here in a minute. Again, I promise not to get too marketing-ish, but I'm trying to paint a picture. I promise. Stick with me. So with RLC Plus and RLC Pro, those are the commercial products that CIQ builds off of Community Rocky Linux. And with that, there's ways that CIQ changes the kernel, the platform, the user space a little bit from Community Rocky Linux. So while everything's still binary compatible, it's not identical. Those are two very important terms to kind of keep in mind. It's compatible, but not identical, especially when you get into some of these RLC Pro variants. There's a hardened variant, so if you work in the federal space, you might look into RLC Pro hardened. But today, what we're talking about, what CIQ just released a few weeks ago, is RLC Pro AI. And what this is we talked about general purpose Linux, but what this is a purpose-built Linux. I don't want to say distribution because people kind of freak out when you talk about distros, but a variant of Community Rocky Linux built on RLC Pro. RLC Pro AI has its own specific version. I'm trying to choose words carefully because definitions get overcharged, but There's the CIQ Linux kernel, or the CLK kernel, that's used in RLC Pro AI. There's some changes to user space, the libraries that are included. So it's purpose-built. RLC Pro AI is purpose-built to run local LLMs and do inference, do training, do kind of your typical chat setup. It is specifically built for this. And so RLC Pro AI is one of the first. I don't think we were the first, but one of the first Linux distributions to come out with an AI variant. And so it's really, really cool because with some benchmarks, and Damon, I'll let you talk to some of the numbers. By purposely tuning your Linux kernel and your Linux distribution to an AI workload, you can actually see some pretty great performance benefits, right?
There's all kinds of neat stuff you can do just depending on the specific tunings and tweaks that you want to make. We think we've come up with a pretty decent starter set, at least, to ship with.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with deployment issues, with all the engineering time that goes into this, with hardware availability, every fraction of a second you can take off processing time, every little bit of space that you could squeeze out of your hardware just makes it so much easier. And so I mentioned RLC Plus and RLC Pro AI. There's additional benefit to this, and that would be that all the drivers, all the PyTorch versions, everything, all the CUDA, all the things that we were talking about are already pre-installed. So CIQ and NVIDIA have worked together, and then CIQ and AMD have worked together to build variants on RLC Pro that already have the driver set up. So all you have to do is put in your card, install the operating system, and away you go. And so RLC Pro AI already has the drivers, already has CUDA, already has PyTorch pre-configured and tested, ready to go. And what's really cool is if you're on the home labber side, or if you're on the community side, there's RLC Plus with NVIDIA. There's RLC Plus with AMD. It's really cool because it's already set up and it's validated. And so I want to kind of poke at that for a second, because it's one thing to just install the latest drivers, create an ISO, and go. But these are not pre-installed drivers, right? These are validated drivers. So what would you say the difference is?
Well, so it's really easy to say, hey, this is how things are supposed to work, right? We can say, oh yes, well the drivers are there, so you boot them up, they should work. Oh, CUDA's there, so you fire up your thing and it should work. But as I mentioned earlier, if you compiled Torch without the right CUDA support, you only have CPU Torch, things like that. that's where we spent our time, right? We actually, we pre-compile things with the right flags. We actually tested things, right? We boot things up on, I've got an A30 here in my home lab. We did a lot of testing on my portable. Right, like we fire it up in the various clouds. We tested on H100s and RTX boxes and all of that, and so we validated that not only do all of the pieces work, but they're also talking to each other properly. Again, you're not going to be recompiling Torch because it was accidentally shipped on CPU only mode, right? Like no, we handled that. We're shipping with not just Torch, actually. I think Torch Vision is part of our pre-included and pre-configured libraries, right? Like the things that everyone working in the AI space is going to need, they're just already there. And again, not just already there, but already there and talking to each other and working properly.
Yeah, I mean, the process that you're talking about, going through and installing the drivers and making sure that everything's configured, and then ensuring that you're actually using the GPU versus the CPU. I mean, all that, the first time out can take a couple of days until, like you're saying, until you get the process documented. It can take a couple of days. Like just a year or so ago, I remember it took me probably 3 days spread over like 10 days or so just to get my NVIDIA GPU blacklisted at the Proxmox level so I could pass it through to my Plex virtual machine, because I like to abuse myself with crazy use cases. But That's just getting Plex to use an NVIDIA GPU for transcoding. That's not gigs and gigs and gigs of storage of virtual memory for an AI model. So I mean, the process just gets so complicated so quick. But with RLC Pro AI, I can actually just plug in the ISO or deploy it on one of the major hypervisors, and I mean, with I think step 2 is just download your preferred model. Step 3, profit. Let's go.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I like to mention to people as I think is a kind of a neat selling point almost is speaking to Ubuntu. I've done this enough that I now I've written my own scripts that set everything up for me on Ubuntu and install all the right things and do all the right magic. And again, this is a script, so I'm not typing anything. Like, this is best possible case scenario. It's a 13-minute process and may or may not involve one or more reboots depending on the specific hardware and if I have to blacklist Nuvo drivers. Right.
Right.
But that's me SSHing in and running a script that does everything. Best case is 13 minutes that I've managed.
Oh gosh.
Best. Right? If you're Googling, if you don't have a script ready to go, yeah, then your 30 minutes, an hour, multiple hours is completely reasonable and to be expected. And doing the exact same thing in RLC AI, again, right? I don't have to. I SSH in and it's ready, right? If I need specific extra libraries or models or whatever, I can download them. But if I don't, and I just want to start writing Python scripts that utilize Torch, I do not have to do anything to the system. I can just start writing code and go.
It's so cool. I mean, it seems like such a little thing. It's like, okay, great, you performance tuned it for AI, but it's so much more, and it makes such a difference, especially if I mean, some of these companies are buying GPUs by the hundreds, and that they're deploying those the minute that those GPUs finally drop in the shipping box. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend 13 minutes per server trying to get this set up. And like you said, that was automated, that was best case, and that was after, what, 2-3 days minimum of probably trial and error. If you're trying to deploy a 50-node AI cluster, I ain't got time for that.
And honestly, too, right? These cards are so expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Those 10 minutes, I mean, I know you're right. We laugh, right? That's all 10 minutes. But right. Overall, if you bought 100 or 1,000, if you're one of these hyperscalers and you're buying hundreds and hundreds of $100,000 GPUs, well, those 10 minutes really matter because those are 10 more minutes of revenue you could have been making selling services to customers or whatever. Again, it doesn't feel like a lot to say 10 minutes, but it adds up fast.
Well, I mean, every startup out there seems to have some kind of AI angle on it right now. So if you're a startup and your survivability is dependent upon getting those GPUs in for starters, once you get them in, assuming your VC funding holds until you can get them in, then yeah, like you said, I mean, every minute is a big deal. You're talking about potential revenue losses of incredible numbers that I could. One company goes under and I could retire based off of what they lost. And if you're like me and a buddy of yours had to step aside from DMing a campaign and you suddenly find yourself DMing 2 D&D campaigns, those AI models are pretty important. No one's going to feel sorry for me for DMing 2 D&D campaigns, but I just threw that out there. So what's next, Damon? Where's RLC Pro AI going from here? What's the goal? What's the hope?
Well, the goal, of course, is to be the preferred platform for everybody who wants to do AI stuff. That in the future that might mean including more libraries that the AI community tends to want to use, more software packages, things like that. We're still playing around with specifics there, so I won't give too much away. But So, so again, some more of that, just we want to help you hit the ground running faster stuff. But also we're continuing to spend time looking to see, hey, where can we get performance improvements? Where can we get efficiency improvements? We outperform because of the specific way we've built and pre-compiled things in certain areas of AI utilization, right? AI segmentation, I think in particular, image segmentation, I should say, we tend to, because of our tunings, outperform compared to other OSs running similar software stacks and the same process. So, we're going to spend more time looking at things like that, seeing, what knobs we can tune that make the lives better of everyone. I'm selfish because I do this myself, so I want to make my own life better.
Yes.
And if it helps everyone else out too, all the better. So it's a fortunate confluence of events, I suppose.
So if there's a sysadmin or someone in my audience that is dealing with this right now, what advice would you give them? Just kind of general advice, whether they're an AI engineer or a systems administrator. What would you recommend?
First off, please check out the products from CIQ and RLC Plus and Pro with kind of those preloaded drivers and software packages. I do honestly, truly, I'm not just saying that as an employee. They do help. They make life a lot nicer and easier going through that process. I do this a lot. I promise. But on top of that, right? If whether you're using RLC or anyone else's offerings here, do your research. Do that Googling, figure it out ahead of time if you possibly can. There is nothing worse than, spinning your wheels and running around in circles because, you forgot a flag at install time or
right.
or whatever. Right. We've all been there. That's really the key. And if you don't, I'll be honest, throw Claude Code on that sucker and ask it to fix your system for you. It's really good at that, and not enough people take advantage of that ability.
Honestly, I just in the past 2 weeks have retired my ChatGPT subscription and have moved over almost completely to Claude. I haven't deleted my ChatGPT account because every now and then these big corporate models will have a day where it's just like, nope, I don't feel like doing the AI thing today. And you ask it the same question 3 different ways and get no response. Then it's really fun to tell one model that the other model is struggling. That seems to help grease the wheels a little bit. It's like, oh, so ChatGPT can't figure out this blacklisting NVIDIA GPU issue for you. Here, this will help.
It's funny because obviously I'm a big Claude user. We use Claude a lot internally at CIQ. I'm a huge fan, but it does go down, it does break, and that local LLM box with its unified memory architecture, I can run open code against it. And so if Claude goes down, I mean, okay, it's a kind of a pain to switch agents and models and all that midstream, but I am in a position where I can just keep going. And oh, by the way, that box is running RLC Pro AI, just for what it's worth.
See, I'd like to get to the point where I'm the opposite. I'd love to be able to default to my local LLM first, and then go out to a corporate model.
6 months to a year, and I think maybe we'll be there.
Yeah, it's not easy, and my interests and my projects are so diverse. Between marketing projects, between planning projects, I've got there's times where it's almost like I've got a project that's I should just rename it to just brain dump. It's like every prompt is like just paragraphs of this is the 16 things that are in my brain. I'm just going to dump it in here. Tell me how to tell me how to untangle this spaghetti so I can get something done. And then like D&D, and then like fact lookup and that kind of thing. It's just so many different things to go into. And then you've got a tool like N8N that I want to get into that you can actually have it try your local LLM first, and if you don't get the right answer, it'll go out and use your tokens with one of your paid subscription models, and it can do all this stuff. And I need to take a week off and do nothing but home lab projects. and then just live stream the whole thing.
Honestly, what's also great fun if you're playing with a local LLM and you have a subscription is go ask your subscription, hey, I have a local LLM. Write me some tests to run it. So I did this. I had Claude write me tests, and then I fed them into my thing, and I took the results and I brought them back to Claude. And I said, hey, Claude, this is what it said. What do you think? How does it measure up? Right? Was this good? What would you have done better, or what would you have done differently, rather? Right? And
is that where it comes back and like rates it based on like an ABC grade system and like?
So it didn't for me, at least. It didn't do that. It mostly just kind of like directly addressed, oh hey, yeah, I think this is roughly the same response I would have given, or it would go, what the heck happened here? Definitely had some what the heck happened here when I was testing various models.
That's awesome.
The local LLMs, they're great, they're wonderful, but using them with tools and other things like that, right? They'll frequently put context or formatting in the middle of like answers or things like that, and again, these are things that Claude, Anthropic, and OpenAI spend untold money, wallpapering over and making pretty, and so you don't see it. But
right.
Doing your own LLM development or using these local models, for the most part, that same level of care isn't there. So it's up to you either have to rely on them to get their act together, or you have to write your own. I've written my own code to fix. I wrote a proxy for Quen 3 pre-next because it couldn't work with tools. It would break tools. I wrote a proxy that would just intercept all of its tool requests and fix them and rewrite them correctly and then send them on.
Wow. It's a crazy world we live in, and for a few years I was like, is technology just gotten dull? Is there just nothing new to talk about? And then like this whole the last few years, it started out like, oh, this is just a fad, this will go away, but there's just so many new and different exciting things you can do now.
Absolutely. I was the biggest AI skeptic in the world, and then someone convinced me to try Cursor about a year ago, and my life has just never been the same. I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm all in. It's amazing. Honestly, it for me, it kind of rekindled my love of engineering and building stuff. Right?
I love that.
It's so much easier. I don't have to spend days and days and days running down dependencies to try out an experiment or to try out a cool idea. I can go, hey, let's get something sketched out. Let's get something that I can start banging against and playing with and seeing what ideas work and what don't.
Mm-hmm.
In minutes instead of days or weeks, or I give up after 3 months of not being able to.
Right. Well, that's awesome. Well, any last thoughts you want to share? Something we've talked about or something we didn't talk about?
I think I would mostly just say, everybody out there, keep your eyes open. The industry is moving fast. CIQ is moving fast. I think there's going to be really awesome stuff, honestly, just kind of all over the industry over this year. I think this is going to be a really, really exciting year for AI, especially after seeing what happened last year. And I hope, as a longtime sysadmin systems engineer, that the pain of AI is a thing that we're hopefully gonna solve, or at least make a whole lot better. Because I care a whole lot about it myself.
For sure. Well, that's awesome, Damon. I really appreciate you coming on the show and
it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great chatting with you.
Yeah, and of course, thank you to this episode's sponsor, CIQ, aka Control IQ. Really excited to be working with CIQ on some of these technologies. I've learned a lot about high performance computing in the last few months, and getting to see how that's kind of fueled this move towards AI and purpose built Linux variants has been really cool to see. So definitely go to CIQ.com to learn more about RLC Pro AI. And if you are a hobbyist and a home lab user, check out RLC Plus. They come with a couple of different variants with more in the pipe. The biggest one we probably talked about was RLC Plus NVIDIA, where the entire NVIDIA graphics stack is already pre-installed on top of a Rocky Linux base. So it really makes life easy. So that brings us to the close of episode 20 of the IT Guy Show. There was a long pause there with the holidays and with the move and with the job switch, but glad to be back on a semi-regular cadence. And if you want more Eric the IT Guy, head over to the Fedora podcast. Next week, we'll be talking about Fedora Flock. That conference is coming up before we know it. I'll be working with Noah Chelaya and the Fedora podcast team to be talking about Fedora Flock, the on-site developer conference that Fedora hosts every year. So check out the Fedora podcast and make sure to like and subscribe this content, because I might just have an expert home labber coming on the show to talk about his build and maybe give me some advice, and hopefully all of you some advice before I really start trying to figure out what I'm going to do with that PowerEdge R730. No, it's an R720. Sorry, R720. It's even older and really, really long in the tooth. It needs to be laid to rest. But lots of fun content coming up. And if you would be interested in sponsoring a future episode of the IT Guy Show, or sponsoring the show in general, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at podcast@itguyeric.com. On behalf of my guest today from CIQ, Damen Knight, I'm Eric the IT Guy Hendricks. Really appreciate you all tuning in, and hope to see you back here real soon. Thank you much.